Well, the Blazers have kept their coach. I don't know how people feel about it. I know a lot of people didn't like Chance for a couple of years, right?
No,
It's actually pretty
I
neat.
mean, look, this is a very informal thing. I just when they extended Cronin and when they extended to Chance, I just did one of those Twitter like, hey, how you feeling? And you get 50 Blazer fans that react to it, so it's not like this is any sort of scientific poll, but it definitely seems more negative than positive.
They don't like Chance?
I just think that.
And why is that?
I just think in general the fan base feels that this is a little bit of rinse and repeat, and I think the fan base wants to be more aggressive. I think the fans think the old notion of the Blazers for years and years was just run it back and we'll be fine, run it back, and the Al Farouk Aminus and not having to really do anything. And it kind of feels like they're telling you, oh, this is a good young group, and as long as we keep everything together, we'll grow into a contender. And I think fans have, whether that's fair or not, I think fans are frustrated at, give us time, we're going to run it back, and this will grow into something.
But the coach isn't going to matter much until you get better play. Like, in other words, what do you want? Freaking Phil Jackson coaching this group? Guess what? They still win 36 games.
I think with Malone out there, and I think with Jenkins out there, I think there was the idea that maybe you should go look at one of those. But I think from the Blazers' perspective, the players like Chance, we saw a lot of growth and development. And I think it's hard to bring back Cronin and then say that Billups, who kind of took chicken S and made not really chicken soup out of it, but maybe a nice broth.
It's chicken.
Chicken salad?
Yeah, chicken salad. No one really
chicken
likes.
salad.
Yeah, but this one has raisins in it, so it's not that good, but it's all right.
Too much celery.
Yeah, but if you're gonna bring back Cronin, I think it was hard maybe that, and I honestly believe, and you'll hear in this clip, look, we found out today, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that one person is in charge of this thing, and it's that effing Bert Cole. And this is what I talked about, one of the clips from the press conference, about 25 minutes, the freaking Bert Cole thing again. You forget about it because he's behind the scenes, and so you want to believe that someone has their head out of their ass and is making decisions, and no, we find out that jackwad is still the one in charge of everything.
Yeah, Jody gets a lot of the blame. Like, I always direct my ire at Jody,
and it's not.
Maybe I should
Bert.
start directing it at Bert.
And the one thing we know is that they just take the path of least resistance. And when they won the 10 of 11 games and the Moda Center started filling up again, and you could sell people on this is the future and this was the easy and cheap path out, dude, that guy behind the scenes is going to sit there and continue to do the same thing that he always does, which is rinse and repeat. And that's the problem that I have. And at the end of the day, regardless of what you think of the GM, the coach, every week, do you have the clip, Buck? Look, we're doing weekly powwows now with Bert.
Bert's great. We spend a lot of time, when I say we, we do a thing which I think is really unique and very positive for, what we're doing here. We call it a sync up, where it's myself, Chauncy, Dwayne, and Bert. Cool. Once a week, it's a big download on what's going on in our worlds that week. What are we working on? What do we need help with? What's going well? What isn't? And Bert plays a great role in that, where he's moderator. He's asking us questions. He's helping us think in different ways. He's providing insight, with, his decades of experience. So, that's a microcosm of the role Bert plays overall, where he's active. He cares about this team. He cares about us. He wants to see us all succeed, and he's challenging us. Hey, have you thought about this? Hey, we need to do this better. And it could be, the topics are wide ranging. Of course, big stuff like roster decisions. There's input there and there's collaboration. Hey, have you thought about this? What about what's this team saying? There's definite, back and forth with myself and Chauncy and him, and good positive feedback.
Yeah, dude, Bert's the owner. You can be mad at Jody all you want. Dude, Jody Allen is not involved. She just isn't. It's Bert Cole. And I'm sorry, decades of experience. The only thing you have decades experience of is being the best friend of a billionaire. And somehow you managed to weasel your way in and be a pain in the ass in this organization for 20 years. And now you're completely unchecked. The fact that we're having weekly check-ins now, sync-ups,
well,
there's a reason why it's unique, because no one does it.
Wait, no one does what? Oh, the weekly.
A weekly sync-up with Bert Cole.
If I'm being fair, I think synergy amongst those four would be a good thing. But it's just that Bert doesn't really have particular knowledge or particular passion or really much of any skill set needed to be you know what I mean? Like, it'd be one thing if that's somebody who could bring something to the table, but Joe Cronin said it. He's like, well, he's just a moderator, and he makes you think.
What would you say you do here?
You know,
Thank you.
So now I think we see why Joe Cronin retained his job, because he clearly cups Bert's ball sack.
I think there's a lot of that, yes.
I mean, that was a little thick there.
That was the problem that I have with this. Like I said, I
Yikes.
don't have a problem. I get it. I get why you bring back the Denny trade and the Kamara trade saved his job. And I get it. You got some synergy here, and your team overperformed, and you're playing hard for your coach. I get bringing it back. But problem one for me is that we found out that Bert is running this team. It is not Jody Allen. This is squarely in the camp of your owner is Bert Cole. Oh my God. And then the second part that I have the biggest problem with is we had the GM and the coach basically say that you don't need to go find a marquee player. The marquee player and the future of your team is already here. And oh my God, I find that beyond frustrating and quite frankly terrifying.
Well, dealer's choice. You want Cronin or Chauncy first?
Take your pick.
This year, I felt like we got a ton of data. What's working, what isn't, what skill sets do we need to add, what types of personalities do we need to add. We learned a lot about our roster this year. Do we have all the answers yet? No. Are we still learning? Yes. I mean, still the second youngest team in the league, still have a lot to learn about and see from our young players and how these veterans fit in with them. So the approach, though, I think we can definitely be more diligent about the specific type of player that we're adding. And I love that we're at that stage where, as a front office, we don't feel that pressure to keep taking swing after swing to try and hit on the next up-and-coming guy. I think we're starting to feel really comfortable with our talent base, that we can be more diligent about adding specific types of guys.
What? You're at the place? What do you mean you're at the place?
That's uninspiring.
What place?
Well, it's terrifying.
What place are you talking about?
Well,
the
they
place of
think-
not making the playoffs?
Well, they think that they're going to turn into the Rockets. They have used that comparison many times, and I that's a giant stretch to me. I don't see what they see, but then again, I didn't watch them much this year at all. I've seen them play. I've seen Chauncy coach. I know people. It's a small town, right? You hear things. I feel like that's really what they have to sell. And I think people with their eyes open aren't buying any of that as a legitimate selling point. They don't have anything to sell.
And Chauncy said the same thing. Chauncy reiterated.
He thinks they're going to be the Rockets.
And he thinks that the talent they have. I would like to point out that the two of your three key guys that you relied on didn't even start this year. Midway through the year, they both got benched. That shocks me. And this year seemed so crazy to me that you went through this tank, and then this year you decided in a deep draft that you don't need to tank. And we're finding out that you don't need to tank anymore because the roster you have is just good enough. So we're now saying that, like, we don't need to get rid of Simons. Simons and Scoot coexist, and Sharp turns into Kobe, and Denny's the next great all-star here, and Donovan Clingan can play more than 20 minutes. That's the part. I understand the vision, and I understand Chaunce, and I understand Cronin, and I see the path forward. I do. But boy, the Bert Cole thing, and then hearing from coach and GM that you can now go just find some role players, some specific guys to fill in roles and let this thing cook. And that I don't get.
Well, the natives were getting restless, and this keeps them at the gate. I think one thing about that is, to help you understand it, I think maybe is that Chauncy, remember when you're the coach and you're guiding young players, you get invested in those kids and those players. And I think Chauncy really likes them, and that clouds how he may view their potential. Yeah. That's probably a fair thing.
I think that's a fair thing.
Right. And so then,
because you see the growth and development, and you can fool yourself into thinking that it's going to grow.
That's right.
And we saw that so many times, and it's why they didn't do anything. They just kept telling us grow and develop. But at least when you were telling us grow and develop, you had LaMarcus, who was the star. You had Damian was the star. So now you're telling me that the future of this team rests on Denny going from, a nice solid player to a surefire all-star, and that Scoot and Shaden Sharp both become stars.
Well, and then I think then what you had was you had a pretty solid second half of the season
against a lot of crap teams.
That's right. I mean, look, you don't have to sell me on that. But they did point out that they were like, what, third in defense in the second half of the season.
They played hard for him.
Which is way too small a sample size, but it's all they have to sell.
Yeah.
So they have to sell something, right?
Yeah.
That's really it. And so if anybody with a brain buys that, I don't know what to tell you. If you have your eyes open, I think everyone's on the same page, unless you're just biased. And it is that this is just a very mediocre roster that maybe will get a little better, but it's not.
And I guess
it's not going anywhere. They don't have great players.
And that's my point. Let's say you have another 7 to 8 game improvement. Congratulations on being the Sacramento Kings.
If they have an 8-game improvement, how many wins is that?
44.
Yeah. Okay.
You're the Sacramento Kings.
Exactly.
You're the 9 seed.
And that's with a pretty damn good improvement next year. So, and I think we all see that's not happening. So, look, man, at this point, it's on you. You keep watching, you keep paying your money, you keep hope alive. I don't know if that makes you feel better.
And I'll be the first one to say,
they're just a bad franchise.
In the next year or two, if you turn into the Houston Rockets and you win 50 games and you're the 2 seed, I will be the first one to say completely wrong. Completely wrong, and congratulations. But when I look up and down the NBA at teams that are real contenders, it is not a collection of decent guys that are solid players.
Can I also
say difference makers, and
we have not. They don't have any difference. Can we also say we haven't seen this is a nice season for Houston?
Yeah,
but
no one believes in them.
That's they're in their infancy. This may be the best season they'll have.
You know who?
And they come regressing back.
You know who the Houston Rockets are this year? The last couple years, I give you the Memphis Grizzlies, and the Memphis Grizzlies were a 2 seed, but at least the Memphis Grizzlies had Ja Morant, and now you look at Memphis and they fired their coach. They have a bunch of injuries, and Ja Morant may be on his way out of town. So I don't know. We see it from two different perspectives. Danny today was talking about, he thinks that he's hearing that maybe the new NBA is not about having 1 or 2 stars. It's about a collection of guys, and the Houston Rockets or the new CBA may be the way it's built. And if that's the case, then again, maybe I'm wrong. But history has told me, and I'm not an NBA savant. I don't watch the league up and down. There's plenty of people that understand the game a million times better than me. But when I look through the league, and I see teams that are difference makers and teams that contend and win titles, they have difference makers. And so maybe you want to be the outlier, but I say this like the NFL draft. If you're going to pick a left tackle, right, the left tackle should have long arms and have certain metrics. If you're drafting a corner, he needs to have certain metrics. Otherwise, you're betting on your team being the one outlier that changes the rules to everything. And I hate betting on the outlier, and it feels to me that the Blazers are saying we are going to be the outlier of outliers, and that drives me crazy.
Yeah, the league really isn't that hard to understand, is it? I mean, come on, it's simple. It's about star players.
Feels that way to me.
Blazers traded theirs, and now they have none, and they're trying to sell you what they can.
Which is solid group that plays really hard, and they play good defense.
And again, like I said, if you buy that, okay, good, enjoy it, but it's not going to be worth watching for quite some time. It doesn't seem like. I do think, circling all the way back to Chauncy, I do think the one guy who I would hold on to in this organization is him. Yeah. I think he is a good coach.
He gets guys to play hard.
It's just, he's only going to be able to take him so far.
Yeah.
But if he's all in about staying here, I think they've dodged a bullet by, because they peed in his pot by not re-upping him during the offseason. Yep. And so you almost lost him too. Yeah. But luckily, that's like the one good thing that happened. This is just my opinion, but I think the one good thing that's happened is you were able to keep him because the young players do like him, and that's a good thing. You have to have buy-in.
And he got Scoot and Shaden to pull their head out of their asses a couple times this year, and you need that because those two guys under this plan, your future basically rests on what Denny becomes. Kamara, you know what he's going to be. That dude is a rock solid defensive guy in the game. Offensive game will get a little better, but your whole team is predicated around how good does Denny become, and can Shaden and Scoot go from potential to solid upper tier starters. That's your whole team, and now it's can Chauncy find it?
Good luck. So Chauncey's back, multi-year extension.